Welcome to Intermediate Blending, a follow-up series to Beginning to Blend. I'm JoRaSe, your host for this series, just like the last. Now, let's delve in and begin. So this time we're going to be texturing a book, and you may notice something down at the bottom of the videos. This is a new thing I'm doing in response to not being able to have the end little card thing that you guys could click on to go to my Patreon. I've got it set up as a way for people, if anyone out there is interested and wants to have one of my models, you can go to my Patreon page, and that's where all that is handled. So the link will be scrolling down there at the bottom. Can't click on it, but it's at least there for you to see and write down. All right, that out of the way, let's get going. We've got Blender fired up, and we need to open up our file. I guess turn on screencast keys, and now open it up, and we're doing the book texture, and this time I provided the complete Blender file, and you can see the two books that we're doing. One is on one layer, one is on the other. So if we go to the first layer, you can see it's real simple. Go to the second layer, and you can see it's a bit more detailed. The reason we're doing it this way is because this is how models for video games are sometimes constructed. You've got a higher polygon, which is this one, a higher poly count model, and then a lower count. So we're going to focus on texturing the lower count model today, and then on Thursday we're going to do the other one and compare. All right, that leads to entering into edit mode with the tab key. We want edge select mode, it makes it easier. And all we're going to do is hold down the Shift and Alt keys to select. Uh-oh, what happened to... Thought I had screencast keys on. Oh well. Okay, so we're going to hold down the Shift and Alt keys and click to select our edges. And we don't want these, because what we're doing right now is making the distinction between the book cover and the pages. So there, we've got that done. Now we need to put in another selection here and here. And that's going to make it easier to separate out the edges. So now we want to go on the left where it says shading UVs. We want to click there, and we want to mark the selected edges as seams, and you'll see they turn red. So we can now deselect that, and we also need to put one here because this is the main portion of the book cover that's going to have any image or wording or whatever. So we want this one to be nice and clear. So we're going to mark that. And lastly, we need to carry these over. And I know I deselected them earlier, but that was with a purpose, because we're wanting to have everything set up in such a way that we're getting one step done first. So now that we have it marked for everything else, we can go ahead and mark these. And that should be it. So let's go ahead and select everything. Come up to the top, or you can do it at the bottom, either one. We're going to right click when it goes into a double arrow. So when it's like this, we're going to double click, and we want to split the area. Now, one side we're leaving as is. The other side, we're going to come down here where the little cube is. We're going to click on that because we want to change what type of editor we're seeing. So we want, from 3D view, we want UV image editor. Now, on the left side, come back up to shading UVs, and under UVs we want to select unwrap. And you can do a lot of different kinds of unwrap. Usually if you've marked your seams, just clicking on unwrap again is all you need to do. So we're going to click on unwrap, and here's our UV layout, and here's the part of the cover that we're going to be seeing. Now, once we get this, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So first thing, hit the G button, drag it all off of this grid, deselect it with A. Down here on the bottom, you get your different UV selection modes. What we want is face. Now we can select our image, or not image, our face, getting ahead of myself there, and move it up into position. And now we want to get the rest of the cover, which is going to be this. And we're going to just drag it up. And with this, we can scale it down because it's just going to be the same color. So we can just basically make it almost a singular point. And we'll put it up here at the top. Now these are going to be the pages. Or I messed up there. These are the pages. Had to think about what was going on, what I was seeing. Okay, so these we want bigger, but not terribly big because they're not detailed, so we can leave them about that size. And this, we'll just take it down like we had done before, leave it about the same size. Now, if we go back into vertex mode for UV selection, this needs to scale a bit. So we're going to scale it on the y-axis. Make it a bit wider, like a book cover would be, and make the entire thing bigger, so we can get more detail in via the image map. That should be good. Just compare. Slide it over on the X just a bit. Okay, and now max out what we've got up to there. And make sure we've got the right stuff here. So we're going to rotate this 90. Move it up. Scale it in, and I'm going to go ahead and move it into the book. Since it's just the rest of the cover, it'll be the same color. Now rotate the pages 90 degrees and scale those up. Because what we're trying to do is fill in the grid as best we can. And we've done that, so now we're going to hit the A button to select everything, and then the P button to pin it. And everything looks, all the vertices have a red dot over them now, which means they are pinned. All right, now we're going to export this as a UV layout. And we're going to go ahead and move it into the book texture model. And I did not put the files in the folders in there like I usually do, because this is something that is important to do yourself. So we're going to go ahead and create a new directory, and we're going to name it Book Texture LOD Models, or LOD Model. LOD for level of detail. And then we're going to create one more. Going to call it Book Texture LOD Textures. And on the bottom here, make sure all UVs are checked. The size is okay, and we want it exported as a PNG. So we can now, up at the top, hit Export UV Layout, and nothing looks like it happened, but it is exported. So now we want to go to our Start, and we're going to load up Inkscape, another free program. I try to use stuff that is free, So now we're going to open, and we're going to go to Intermediate Blends and the Book Texture folder. Now we're going to open up the texture file. And yay me, it shot to the other screen. And we're back. Now we also need to open up the reference image, because we're going to pull from that to complete our file. So here's our book cover. The title is fitting if you find yourself in a fantasy game setting. It means History of Slimes, which are always the starter enemy in any fantasy role-playing game. So I figured I would do that and use that as a title. And yes, it is Latin. Again, going with the fantasy theme. So with this, what we're going to do, number one is zoom in. And we want to ungroup. No, we don't. We want to crop. Or we can just copy the entire thing and paste it in. Now, what we want to do is scale this up to where it fits. Can't really see behind it all that well, so let's bring the opacity down. So that's looking okay. Pull the opacity back up. And we're going to create a new rectangle. Okay. Since it's got the color for the pages, we'll just go ahead and put that in over here. And now we want one to match the blue to finish off the cover. And there we go. Let's see, maybe pull this down a bit. Yeah, that's up too close to the top. If we pull it down to about there. And then just copy this, paste it in. That looks better. Okay, so now we're going to save the document. But we really don't want to do that. What we really want to do is save it as a different file name. So export PNG image. And it'll pull up your export PNG image stuff over on the side here. If we hit export as, we can export it as book texture LOD 1 and hit export again. And now, since we're still in a editable document, we can delete all of the image if we were working with something that needed more than one image and wanted a standalone file that we would just reference to when making textures. We would do this, and then we would save it. So just another thing to make it easier. So let's go back into Blender, and in the UV editor down at the bottom we have image. We want to open the image we just created. So we're going to go to the textures folder and select our texture image. And there it is. So how do we see it on the model itself? Need to switch from shaded view or solid view to texture. And there we have it. Admittedly, you would want the text facing the right way, and that is easily done by coming into the UV editor and flipping the cover portion on the x-axis. And flipping is just Control M and X, and then we're also going to do it on the Y. And that fixes that. So there we have our fantasy book, History of Slimes. And this is the first level of detail. Doesn't look all that wonderful, but when you need a low poly model, it'll do. That's all for this session of Polygonal Art with JoRaSe. If you enjoyed what you saw, how about giving this video a thumbs up? And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss out on future videos from me. In the video description below, you'll find my Patreon link. Feel free to check it out. Now, on to the credits.